Welcome to Education Today. I'm Ashlyn Bashline of Katanning High School in the Armstrong School District. Today we're going to talk about issues that every student, school, staff, and faculty at every level has to deal with and be properly prepared for. As educators, our main concern and objective is to ensure a safe and structured learning environment for our students. Outside of the obvious is bullying, which can occur in a variety of different ways. There are also a variety of different issues that any given student may be dealing with. This has become an increasingly important issue, especially at middle school and high school levels, but that can affect people at any point in their lives. To help us educate us tonight we'll be discussing a number of different topics and related to these very concerns. With us, we have a professor from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh who will share with us the professional insight into this important topic. Welcome to Education Today.
Great, thank you.
Would you please introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Jared Colbert, and I teach counseling at Duquesne University, and I've been involved in bullying research for about the last 15 years. The way I got involved in it, I was a middle school counselor in Virginia, and we received a grant to implement Olvesa's bullying prevention program, which is the most widely used bullying prevention program in the United States.
Could you give us a little bit more information on your background and experiences?
Sure. As I mentioned, I was a middle school counselor where we implemented Olvesa's bullying prevention program, and one of the reasons why we implemented the bullying prevention program is that we had a violence prevention program, and our research suggested that it was moderately effective in reducing violence. And one of the reasons why we decided that maybe we're only being moderately effective in reducing violence is that we weren't addressing another form of violence, which is bullying. Violence prevention programs tend to take the assumption that students are aggressive because they lacked good communication and conflict resolution skills. However, that doesn't really take into account that a lot of times students do have good communication or conflict resolution skills, but they purposely want to harm another person through bullying, right? So really, if you're going to be effective in addressing violence in a school, you need to have both a violence prevention program where you teach people good conflict resolution skills, and secondly, you also work with those people who want to be aggressive. That's just their tendency, that they're motivated to maybe harm somebody else for a variety of reasons.
Thank you. Are you aware of any state-mandated procedures that schools or business are required to abide by or train against their students or employees?
Sure. You're probably familiar with, in Pennsylvania, all schools are required to have a bullying prevention program, and also to have a school-wide, a district-wide policy in the students' code of conduct that prohibits bullying. And most states have followed Pennsylvania's lead in that most of the states across the country now require school districts to implement some type of bullying prevention program. And I think schools really vary to the degree to which the effectiveness in which they implement bullying prevention programs.
Are you aware of any, can you give us a little bit of Bullying has always been an issue, but what has made it get to the point that it is now?
You know, that's a really good question, and my view is that bullying has probably been around for a really long time. So I think people's consciousness is just has increased in the last 10 to 20 years. I think in the past people tend to think it was really no big deal. You know, and you probably heard of different sort of myths or notions about bullying. Is it just part of childhood, makes you more of a man? And I think one of the reasons why it's become there's more focus on it now in the media and within academia at universities is the research suggests that unfortunately a lot of people are pretty significantly harmed by bullying. So at one time it was thought it was really no big deal, and now we're coming to the realization is that some people really are harmed both in the short term and long term. So that's why I think you continue to hear a great deal about it.
Right. One of our teachers pointed out that you know, when he went to school, it was all at school. You know, there was no social media. You get on and it's there. But now, instead of coming home and it's gone, it's still there because you're on, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, and it's just more around than it was, way back when.
I think that's a good point. And one of the things is that I think that inherently we tend to be aggressive. I think people tend to be aggressive. And one of the things about growing up, maturing, is learning how to manage that tendency to be aggressive. I think schools that have violence prevention programs, a lot of times what they'll see is a change in the form of aggression. So if they're able to decrease overt physical violence, they'll now see different forms of violence. And now they'll see the relational violence, or they'll see the aggression, the bullying through social media, as you mentioned. So that's, right, I think, one of the difficulties that schools and educators have to keep up with is if we implement some type of policy to reduce bullying or aggression, just know that there's a possibility that then students will find another way of being aggressive with each other. Right.
There are many forms of bullying. Can you discuss these different forms of bullying can take?
Sure. We've talked about a few of them. A lot of times when people think of bullying, they tend to think of a boy who's physically larger who intimidates other boys, and that's what we call physical bullying. We also obviously have verbal bullying and also relational bullying. Sometimes it's called relational or social aggression. So a verbal bullying, it's negative comments to other people, taunts. Physical bullying, pretty straightforward. I think people understand what that involves: intimidation, destruction of property, stealing, etc. And then relational social aggression is probably the one I think is probably the most prevalent in schools today, where there's manipulation of relationships. So people are trying to undermine other people's perceptions of a person by spreading rumors, saying negative comments to others. And some people distinguish between relational aggression and social aggression. Relational aggression can be defined as wanting power within a relationship. So I'm going to exert influence if you don't do what I want you to do, right? And I'll threaten to end the relationship. So it's sort of an aggressive way of relating to other people within a relationship. Where social aggression is more about trying to manipulate somebody else's social status, spreading rumors, trying to get other people not to be friends with another person.
Right. In your opinion, what do you think, causes bullies to bully and that?
Well, that's I think a very hard question, because obviously there's so many different factors and motivations, and definitely would want to try to understand the person who you're concerned about, the perpetrator, and they probably have a variety of different motivations for bullying. Some people are what we call bully victims, meaning that they've been bullied themselves and they see this as a response to dealing with that, right? So sometimes these people lack impulse control, they struggle in managing their anger, so they sort of react as to what they see as threats, attacks upon themselves. Okay. For other people, there is research that suggests that people who frequently bully tend to have a higher need for social status or dominance, meaning they want to be in control. They want others to see them in a positive fashion, and they see this as an effective way of doing that. There is also some research that suggests that both victims of bullying and perpetrators of bullying do tend to come from certain family backgrounds. For example, children who frequently bully, sometimes their parents tend to be more authoritarian, okay? Meaning that they tend to be somewhat aggressive in how they approach their child, or sometimes they're somewhat neglectful. They don't have a real good sense of how their child is interacting with others, so they sort of don't realize that their child needs guidance in learning how to interact with others in a more pro-socially acceptable way.
Now, to go along with that, let's take a look at this from another perspective. What would cause I guess we pretty much answered what would cause someone else to bully someone else. Mm-hmm. Another thing I noticed, a lot of people find it humorous to bully someone because they're hiding their own problems. They're trying to make their problems look smaller than the person they're actually bullying, which in some cases it's actually a lot bigger than what they're bullying for. You know what I mean?
I think it's a good point, and I think that's pretty true for bully victims. People who do have lower self-esteem, feel attacked or judged by others, so they respond in an aggressive fashion. Interestingly, though, the research suggests that students who frequently bully are really all over the continuum when it comes to self-esteem. Some have low self-esteem, like I think that's true for bully victims. Others tend to have high self-esteem, and they want to see themselves as controlled. They see themselves as popular. So they see this as a way of continuing that, of demonstrating how much power that they have over others.
Students have ways of calling for help, even though it may not seem to others or even themselves that is in this case. What are some of the warning signs that may be off?
Well, looking for like more covert signs where the person's not explicitly stating that they're being bullied. Obviously, any of the signs, symptoms of depression, so more isolation, lack of goals, changes in behavior, lack of interest in school, lack of interest in activities, like I mentioned, isolation, withdrawal, so spending less time with friends and family. Just a general sense of obviously sadness, lack of hope for the future. So any of the typical signs of depression, symptoms of depression, I think is what you want to take a look for.
Right.
Okay? Interestingly enough, that one thing that surprised me when I was working with kids who were frequently bullied is you would think that they'd be angry about the fact that they're being bullied, and some are, but a lot of times students who are frequently bullied, they actually feel more of a sense of sadness, and it seems as if they almost feel like a sense of they're responsible in some way for the abuse that they've been experiencing. And we want to try to help them understand, actually know what other people are doing to you is inappropriate, right? Maybe even if it's something that you're doing that people don't like or disagree with, doesn't mean that gives them the right to be aggressive towards you. So we want them to understand that it's okay to be frustrated and annoyed and not accept the fact that other people would be aggressive with them.
Right. I'm sure there are also less obvious signs to keep an eye out for as well. Would you be able to point those out?
Less obvious? I guess some of the things I mentioned earlier, some of those signs and symptoms. I think I need just change in behaviors of the individual. If you have an individual who tends to be outgoing or tends to be happy, and all of a sudden you see changes you see that they're more sad or they're not as involved in activities and with other people. Or you just get the sense that something's bothering them. We know that often students don't talk about the fact that they're being bullied. I think it's something only about 40% mention it to somebody else. And if they do mention it to somebody else, typically they'll mention to another friend at school. They frequently won't tell parents or they won't tell teachers. So obviously if they do tell students, what we want students to do is also go to teachers, go to parents to inform them of what's occurring. The child who's frequently bullied, obviously they're worried that it's going to make it worse, if they mention anything about it. And that's why I think the state has done a great thing in requiring school districts to have bullying prevention policies, because what they're really saying is comprehensively, as a school, we're willing to really try to put a stop to it. Mm-hmm. If someone's being bullied, we want everyone to know about this, and we want the child who's being bullied to really have support, to know that other people are going to support you. Other students, teachers are really going to attempt to do something about it. Right. Now, I understand that children sometimes who do bring it up, sometimes it does get worse before it gets better. But I think I think over the years, I think through time, I think society and schools will get better at knowing how to deal with it. Right. and turning sort of the tide with the issue, so to speak.
Is there anything else related to these topics we feel we should discuss?
Well, that's great. It sounds like I really enjoyed hearing about what you've been doing at your school, and I think that's really indicative of a lot of bullying prevention programs attempt to do, is they want to encourage bystanders, people who witness, who observe this, in taking a stand against it. Some of the research that I've done suggests that a lot of students are concerned about bullying, and they often feel they're not exactly sure what to do. So teachers, parents, adults, we want to be able to support those students who want to do something against it and give them an opportunity to think about what are things that we can do at our school so we can apply social pressure to say we don't accept this. And research does suggest that focusing on bystanders does seem to help in reducing bullying, letting students know who frequently bully perpetrators that, look, other people are concerned about this. They don't approve of this. At the same time, I think it's important for us to know that this is a very widespread issue. I mean, a lot of people are victims of bullying, and a lot of people are perpetrators of bullying. A lot of times people are both. They're both victims and perpetrators. So we also want to take a look at ourselves and think about times when we've been perpetrators and know that it's not appropriate. At the same time, it's good for us to sometimes understand that we've done these things and just to think about how do we change that for the future. So one of the things I try to really get across to perpetrators is that it's okay to want power, it's okay to want status, but there's various ways of doing that, appropriate ways of doing that. In many cases, students who frequently bully already have power and status, and it's just helping them recognize that you have status. You don't necessarily have to demonstrate your power or harm other people just for other people to know that you are, that you're popular or have status.
Alrighty, thank you. All right, we are going to take a short break and then come right back to discuss further how to help and prepare yourselves and your students for different things life might throw at your way. Stay tuned.
Before I came to IUP, I had no idea what college would be like or what role I would play or where I'd be in the future. But when I came to IUP, everything changed. I met people who really made me feel like I belonged. I had great classes at a great nationally ranked university. Hi, my name is Megan Miller. I'm a fine arts major, and this is my university.
We're back with Armstrong School District's Education Today. Tonight we're discussing how you can prepare yourselves and your students for different challenges that you may face. We have with us Dr. Jared Colbert, a professor from Duquesne University who specializes in bullying. Alrighty, bullying can be a huge issue if not dealing with properly. Let's talk about the consequences of bullying. There are a wide range of different effects it can have on the victims. What are some of those?
Sure. The research is pretty clear. There's both short-term and long-term negative consequences. In the short term, students are more likely to experience symptoms of depression, school phobia, and a lot of things associated with school phobia, like, for example, physical symptoms that often occur in the morning, so the person can sort of have a reason for not wanting to go to school, lowered self-esteem, social withdrawal, negative impact on academics. If the person's often thinking about being bullied, they're not thinking about trying to do well in school. So those are some of the short-term effects. And unfortunately, a lot of those short-term effects are evident long-term as well. So for students who are frequently bullied as adults, they're also more likely to be at risk for depression. They're more likely to be at risk for suicide, which is both a short-term and a long-term risk. And interestingly enough is that boys who are frequently bullied are also less likely to be in romantic relationships in adulthood. The idea being is it's almost that boys get the sense that I don't have the resources that a woman might be interested in to date, so that they tend to sort of develop this negative perception of their possibilities.
What, if any, effects do this have on who is doing the bullying?
Students who frequently bully, what I like to call perpetrators, it seems as if they continue that style of relating to others sometimes into adulthood. So they are more likely to be involved in the legal system into adulthood. They are more likely to commit domestic violence. Now, once again, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to do that. It just means that there's an elevated risk for them to be aggressive as adults as well. As during childhood, they are also a lot more likely to be diagnosed with things what we call like oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, right? So, and I think that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of focus on bullying in the last 20 years is that we know there's a lot of negative consequences for both victims, but also perpetrators as well. Is that this seems to be a way of relating that many people continue into adulthood.
It used to be bullying was in general something done to someone else in person, but like I said, it has evolved, especially with the technology, like I said, Twitter, Facebook, and different social media. Let's educate the parents out there. Some people may not even know or even think about it. What kinds of different bullying ways are you seeing?
Sure, and when I was a school counselor, we didn't have social media. I know that sounds funny. So I didn't have as much, I don't have as much personal experience with that, but obviously I hear a lot about it from students that I talk to about it. And interestingly enough, the research suggests that bullying through Twitter, bullying through websites, bullying through the social media, there is research suggests that it's actually more negatively impactful on victims than more typical bullying. The idea being is that you can't hide from it. More victims in the past of bullying, at least they felt that there was maybe some safety in home. They could get away from it. Now there's that sense that it's all pervasive, that it's all around them, that other people in the community can see this at any time. So that is one of the things that the research indicates about bullying through the social media, is that students tend to actually see it as being more harmful than maybe some of the traditional forms of bullying. So that's what I can really say about that. And what we hear from kids who are victims is they see that as also probably even occurring more than maybe some of the traditional forms of bullying that we've seen in the schools.
Right. Like you see in movies all the time, Triple Dog Dare Young, Christmas movie,
And the other thing I will say about that too is that I almost feel as if perpetrators of bullying through the social media, it's as if we don't fully understand just the impact of communicating through social media. I mean, people are much more likely to be, I think, aggressive through electronic media and communications because there isn't necessarily that fear of retribution. It's almost as if our brain doesn't remind us of, wait a minute, there's someone sitting across from us that might be really upset by this or might be very angry by this. So I think there's a tendency, it's easy for people to be more aggressive through social media, through electronic communications.
Right, and it's always easier to type it into a computer than it is to say it to someone's face. It's kind of sad though in a way.
Yes.
I just want to ask you one more thing related to social media. What should parents and students be aware of when using things such as text messaging and Facebook? What consequences could they be facing if used improperly?
Well, and parents have probably heard this before, but obviously what you want to do is try to monitor your child's use of that. And if the child's not being responsible in their use of it, I would encourage you to have a period where they're not able to use that. So there might be a period of weeks, months where you say, look, until we can see this, until we see that you can use this in an appropriate way, we don't want you to use that. So you might give them timeout periods. Now I know that's hard, as a parent, how do you monitor that? And that's something that I think does require a lot of energy on the parent's part to try to be aware of, okay, how to use this. Maybe you're going to use that in the living room, that you'll be able to email and do those types of things where I can check in from time to time to see what you're doing and using.
Right, like I know my parents have my passwords to Twitter and Facebook and my email, so even if I'm, in different state, they still know what I'm posting and everything, which is also a good thing,
Yeah, and obviously, a lot of times students are much more effective in using, much more tech savvy than parents are, so it requires the parent to do some investigation and some learning of how do I get more savvy so that I can monitor this more effectively.
Right. I'm sure you've seen conducted research related to bullying. What kind of research have you executed or read that we should be aware of?
Well, let's see. We've done, me and my colleagues at Duquesne University have done research on a variety of aspects of bullying. One of the things we did, actually at schools in this area, I won't mention which schools, we took a look at what teachers and students saw as effective anti-bullying strategies. And just to summarize our conclusions, what we found is that teachers reported intervening in bullying situations much more frequently than students were aware of. So I think one of the implications of that is I think teachers can be more effective in sharing with students that they're concerned about bullying and that they intervene with bullying, and maybe share examples without mentioning students' names of times when they've been successful in doing so. Right. One of the other results of that research was that teachers tend to be more optimistic about the effectiveness of anti-bullying strategies than students were. And so I think that suggests that teachers need to realize that students tend to be pessimistic. And so it's important for teachers, once again, to share with students that they've been effective and that they've had examples share their examples of when they've been effective at helping students with this. So one of the other implications of research is students said that they wanted ideas from teachers and parents. So students want to know, hey, what do I do? How do I handle these situations? So both teachers and parents can really talk with students about how do I deal with these different types of situations. Basically help them problem solve different social situations. You know, I think there's really a continuum of bullying situations, some which are very serious and require the involvement, or hopefully would be helped if they had the involvement of a parent or a teacher. However, there's also more lower grade situations of bullying and relational aggression that adults don't necessarily need to get involved in, but they can help students problem solve about the situation. For example, relational aggression is so common. I think it's so common for people to be relationally aggressive when there's conflict or tension within a relationship. And parents and teachers can help kids realize that that's just sort of a somewhat normal part of maturing, a normal part of relationships, and help them understand, okay, what's going on within this relationship? What might be the contributions you made to that tension and that conflict in the relationship? What are some of the things that you've done? What could you do differently? How do you handle this situation? How might you talk with this person that you're upset or angry with a bit? So they can role play, they can problem solve with students in less serious situations.
I know we've talked about some of the, where else can we see bullying, Twitter, Facebook, school. Are there any other ways that you've seen or done any research on?
No, I think we pretty much named the primary forms of bullying and relational aggression. The only thing I would say is that sometimes you even see parents get involved in it too, and then aggression between students then spills over to parents getting involved and becoming aggressive with students as well. Right. And it's sort of understandable. Parents want to protect their child, and I think it's important for parents to know that schools now have a mandate to support children with this. So I really encourage parents to go to school districts and say, I'm concerned. At the same time, know that the school district sort of has the responsibility for working through and resolving it. One thing I also just wanted to mention too is that the state allows school districts to define bullying, or at least what they're willing to address when it comes to bullying and relational aggression, to also include social media. So some school districts have the power to also deal with bullying that's occurring off of school grounds, that's occurring through social media, that's occurring through internet, Twitter, etc.
Well, that's our show for today. Our thanks go out to Dr. Jared Colbert of Duquesne University in Pittsburgh for taking his time to talk to us with this very important issue. I'd also like to thank Ms. Corinne Linkus from Kittanning Senior High School, the guidance counselor, for helping to arrange our guests to be here. Finally, our thanks go out to the TV production students of Kittanning Senior High School, led by their teacher, Mr. Don Swanson. They were also our film crew for today. As always, DVD copies of this and all Education Today programming may be requested by contacting Chris Garetano, ASD's multimedia technician. Please join us again next week for another look at the Armstrong School District. Visit our website for updated information about the school district, and have a great week.